morning, folks. How you doing? My name is Tim Black. Welcome to the Tim Black Show. I have yet another great interview segment for you. I have the folks over at rootsaction.org. rootsaction.org. I have Jeff Cohen, co-founder, and Norman Solomon, co-founder. And what they are is an activist organization that touches on a number of issues. They're here to discuss a great new project they have that's launching tomorrow officially, No Honeymoon. You guys can't wait to hear this, guys. Welcome, Jeff and Norman. Hey, Jeff and Norm, how you doing?
Great to be with
thanks,
you.
Tim.
I'm doing fine, doing fine. How are you guys doing? How you feeling?
Well, I would say, given our political circumstances, we're feeling strong because we have a progressive movement that we're part of, and I think we're on the march.
Yeah, I've got to say that when we started our Vote Trump Out campaign in swing states, aimed at progressive voters and people of color and young voters, you know, we said that our campaign was vote Trump out, then challenge Biden. So we voted Trump out, and now we're on phase 2 of the campaign, which is challenge Biden, NOHONEYMOON.org.
NOHONEYMOON.org. You know, Norman and Jeff, I was thinking about this, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. I heard a lot of people saying they were going to challenge Biden when they got in, and I was skeptical. You know, I just remember what happened with Obama. You know, it was like people kind of recoiled. They were afraid to talk about, to challenge Obama personally or professionally and publicly. So what makes it different this time that you feel that a different urgency in people and the willingness, Jeff, to challenge Joe Biden?
Well, I think that progressives are better networked than they were back in 2009. We're better funded, we're better organized, we work better in coalition, and we're more astute about the fact that you need to challenge Democrats. You can't, help a Democrat win and then go to sleep, because left to their own devices, the Democrats will serve the corporate donor class rather than the working class of all colors. So, Norman and I, you can look at the color of our hair and know that this is not our first time around the block. And so we go back before Obama. We remember when Bill Clinton was elected in 1992, and then he dithered and he hesitated and he vacillated and he gave corporations what they wanted through NAFTA. And 2 years later, after Clinton becomes president, the right-wing Republicans come storming back because he did not deliver. He did not make people's lives better. And then jump forward to Obama. He takes office in 2009. He bailed out Wall Street, but he didn't have a foreclosure freeze. He didn't bail out Main Street. He didn't help the middle class or working class homeowner and disproportionately Black and Latino homeowners were the ones hurt. And then, of course, because of that hesitation, that corporatism, the Republicans came storming back in 2010. And we don't want that to happen again. And that's why one of our slogans at #NoHoneymoon is we have to save Biden from himself.
I like that spirit. I like the goal. It seems like exactly what we've been looking for. Jeff, is that pretty much sum it up, or what would you like to add?
No, Norman, you add.
Well, I'd say that we've got to learn from experience because, as Jeff was saying, it was a catastrophe when Newt Gingrich and the Contract on America, because of the corporatism and the basically sellouts of the new presidency of Bill Clinton, 1994, the Republicans get a hammerlock on Congress. And again, 2010, same thing. We've got to make sure that the third time doesn't happen. And that requires a different mindset. The conditions are different. And Tim, I've shared your skepticism and fears around the sort of repetition compulsion, you might say, that unfortunately many liberals and progressives have had in past decades, where there is a tendency to gravitate to power, a strong tendency. We don't want to be banished from having lunch in this town again in Washington, D.C. We want access. We might get a job. There's all that attitude. Well, I think it's important for progressives to say that we're not about getting a job. We're not about getting access. We're about changing this country because people are suffering. We need healthcare, education, housing, neonatal care, the retired, the elderly. We're seeing people dying, thousands of people every day, not only because Trump is a liar and a megalomaniac, but also because we don't have a healthcare system in this country, which was dismantled by Republicans and Democrats in past decades. Now we have an opportunity to say we've learned from our mistakes, we're willing and able to organize, and I certainly think it's true that progressives, the left, people of color, the Black Lives Matter movement, young people who've become activated in the last years, the Sunrise Movement, awareness about climate, so many different parts of the rainbow coalitions around issues. We are much stronger now, but we have to be willing and able to challenge the power, not only among Republicans, but among Democrats. And I think Cornel West said it very well. The election last year, the general election, was between, in the presidential realm, a neoliberal and a neo-fascist. And we had to, at the point that it was Biden versus Trump, fight and defeat the neo-fascist. Now we need to fight neoliberalism. And that is a system that is methodical, it's bipartisan, and it's taking lives, and we can't accept it. And if we organize, we can have fundamental change, but we've got to be willing to challenge not only our avowed enemies, but people in power who often say that they're the friends of progressives.
And one other thing, Tim, that we have now that we didn't have at the beginning of the Obama tenure and the beginning of the Bill Clinton tenure is we have these strong progressives in Congress who see themselves allied with social movements. They don't see themselves more allied with the Democratic leaders. They are very close with us. And I'm thinking of people like AOC. I'm thinking of Rashida Tlaib from Detroit, which is where I grew up. I'm thinking of Ilhan Omar from Minnesota. I'm thinking of new people like Jamal Bowman from New York, and hopefully Nina Turner, who we've worked with so closely at Roots Action. She's going to be running for Congress from Cleveland, Akron. So you have something we didn't have years ago, which is these members of Congress that are ready to join us in fighting the Democratic Party leadership if it doesn't deliver.
You know, it's ironic that we brought this up, and I want everybody to know, look, this is not planned. Me and these gentlemen are just talking, and this is where the conversation is going. There's been so much conversation about how to push progressives in Congress, how not to push them, what's the strategy. You know, Nancy Pelosi just yesterday, she won her speakership again, and Speaker of the House. And there was a lot of talk, a lot of disagreement about should the progressives in Congress, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, should they, Rashida Tlaib, should they vote for Nancy Pelosi? Or should they hold their vote and say, hey, bring Medicare for all for a vote. Bring it out now. Even though we expected it not to pass, we thought it was important for them to use their power. I, on the other hand, felt like I didn't want to criticize AOC and Rashida Tlaib and the new progressives because I believe they're just starting to gain power. I think it was a little too early to expect them to challenge the speaker without having enough votes to, even if we got it on the floor, to even have enough votes for it to pass the House. And we know it wasn't going to pass the Senate. And Biden's been on record saying he would veto it. So, look, whatever you think, don't feel that you got to agree with me. You guys been doing this a lot longer than me.
Well,
one at a time. Tell me, what are your thoughts about this? What do you honestly feel?
Well, I'd be glad to disagree with you, Tim, but I don't. I mean, the reality is that we can't go to the mat and start blasting our allies over tactical issues. And everybody's got a role. And we're in the streets, we're protesting. We have a particular set of functions which are grassroots, which are going to make the difference as we build movements. And the reality is, you can't beat something with nothing. The only challenges that Pelosi has faced have been from the right in terms of being elected or reelected speaker. And when you drop back from this, the reality is that for several decades, when there have been third-party efforts from the left, they haven't elected a single member of Congress. They haven't come close to electing a single member of Congress. Now, if AOC or Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar had not run in the Democratic primaries in their districts, they wouldn't be in Congress. And that goes for all the other people that are strong progressives, including the new ones like Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. So we've got to be real about how to gain power. And it's understandable that progressives might be ambivalent about power. They think power is something that's automatically a bad thing. And of course, we experience power as illegitimate from the top down: corporate power, police power, military-industrial complex power. But power from the bottom up, I mean, Dr. King said this very well. Martin Luther King said this in the last year of his life. You know, we hear, of course, and we should, about I Have a Dream, but we don't hear about this one. When Dr. King wrote in his last book that it's true that power without love is ruthless, and we've got to reject power without love. But love without power is anemic. We're sick of being anemic. And so we have to join together and say power from the bottom up, from the grassroots, is where it's at. We have to fight for power from the grassroots, from our communities, that is manifested nationally. And that's where I think it's a big mistake, where people say, oh, screw the Democrats. You know, the Democratic Party is corrupt. Well, people have been saying that for 40, 50 years. There's a lot of truth in it. But our solution is to grab power. Our solution is to have not only 4 members of the squad like last year, not only 8 members of the squad like this year, but we want dozens and dozens. So just to sort of sum up, when there's a pathway to power, you take it. That's why we have all these members of Congress now, more and more, who are genuine progressives. They ran in Democratic primaries. And in terms of federal office, that's where our future is. Those are where the avenues are.
And if I could add, Tim, I don't disagree with what you were saying. It seems silly to me to polarize with AOC to get a vote on Medicare for all when we already know which Democrats are on our side and which aren't. There are 118 co-sponsors. Every Democrat has been lobbied to join Medicare for all. If they aren't a co-sponsor, they're against Medicare for all. Those are the kinds of Democrats that Norman and I and others and Roots Action talks about primarying in the Democratic primary. So there's a great interview that AOC gave to The Intercept, to Jeremy Scahill, right, where she explained, yeah, we're negotiating with Pelosi. We're going to win some demands. But I think she was right that to have a vote on Medicare for all, when we already know which Democrats are for it and which Democrats are against it, they had better things to make demands on. And AOC has said, yeah, we need to replace Nancy Pelosi at some point, but we need to replace her with someone better, not worse. So I find that hard to argue with. At rootsaction.org and No Honeymoon, we see ourselves allied with these progressive members of Congress. We're grassroots, we're on the outside, they're on the inside, but we see ourselves as working in partnership with them.
And if I could just jump in on that, a magic word there, primarying. That is part of our future in terms of transforming Congress. There are a lot of members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. They're progressives in name only, and they're getting away with it because they're not being challenged by methodical grassroots work in their districts as well as nationally to give heft and power to challengers who are genuine progressives, who can achieve, for instance, what Cori Bush achieved last year, and Jamal Bowman, getting rid of members of Congress who generally claim to be progressive and were really nothing of the kind. And at rootsaction.org, we are readying a lot of plans, both as a group ourselves with 1.2 million people on our email list and in coalition with others, to identify and then challenge those in Congress who have a D after their name, who often claim to be progressive, and they got to be primaried. And one more thing, justifiably, a lot of folks put a lot of time and energy into lobbying, letters, emails, phone calls, visits, picket lines, which we need more of at congressional offices. That's all great. But one of the most very effective, arguably the most effective way to quote unquote lobby, is to serve notice on incumbents in Congress, and if they're Democrats, that's in the category of primarying, serve notice, hey, we're going to primary you. We're tired of asking you. We're telling you what we're going to do. We're going to get you out of office if you don't shape up pronto.
I think that's the same goal others have. They want to pressure progressives or people that say they're progressive and make them put it on the line. And I don't disagree with that. I just think there's a way to do it. There's a time to do it. I appreciate you guys giving your opinions on that, because I know it's going to just continue the conversation, but I think we need to have these conversations. This is a tough conversation. I mean, people are hurting. People are frustrated. Medicare for all, the pandemic, so many people lost their jobs, healthcare tied to their jobs. People are like, but maybe this is the perfect time, Tim, because when are we going to have another pandemic that exposes just how bad our healthcare system is? So I understand the sentiment, and I don't want to paint them negatively. I just had a different take on it.
Yeah, I think you're right that there's this frustration during the pandemic when so many people lost their jobs, and you had the corporate Democrats saying, oh, people love their health care tied to their job. Well, yeah, but a lot of people are losing their jobs and have lost their jobs. So I understand. Look, Norman and I have been fighting for Medicare for all since 1993, when we had a nationally syndicated column, and we were probably the only national columnist advocating for Medicare for all. It was called single payer then, or nonprofit national health insurance then. So obviously we need it. What we need immediately, and I know Pramila Jayapal, the leader, co-leader of the Progressive Caucus, we want Biden from the beginning. Let's start changing the qualification age for Medicare. Let's bring it from 65 down to 50, and let's have Medicare for all for everyone under 25. I mean, those kinds of demands. I think Biden is talking about maybe lowering the age to 55, where you can get Medicare for all, where you can get Medicare. So, I mean, we're really in a position of fighting. We don't want to put down activists who had a different tactic than us. But yes, this is the time to keep fighting to expand Medicare. If you can't get health care for all in the richest country on earth during a pandemic, then we're really a sorry society.
And I would add that there's always the time to protest. And 24/7, 365, certainly Roots Action protests and joins with others and supports protests demanding Medicare for all and demanding that we need it now. Everybody should have free health care, especially in the midst of a pandemic. An underlying question is, who do we protest? We protest those who are standing in the way of Medicare for all.
And in a moment, we're going to find out today if the Democrats have taken the Senate, if they'll be able to take the Senate. Then we know exactly. I mean, there'll be no excuses, right? We'll be set up sort of like Obama was. They have Biden in there with the House and the Senate, Democratic House and Senate, and there'll be no room for excuses, right?
I love that you said that, because I feel Democratic presidents have used Republicans as their excuse, and Democratic speakers of the House have used Republicans as their excuse. So if things go the right way in Georgia, the excuse is gone. But Tim, even if things don't go well in Georgia, there is so much, and this is part of why I encourage everyone to go to nohoneymoon.org, #nohoneymoon. There is so much that Biden can do through executive order with existing legislation, even if McConnell's still the head of the Senate. For example, he can't raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour without Congress, but through executive order, he can make sure that every worker that's part of a federal contract is raised to $15 an hour. That would have a great upward pressure on everybody's wages. Another thing he can do is cancel student debt. That's under existing law, the Higher Education Act of 1965. Indeed, Trump used that act to do an executive order where he said during the pandemic, you don't have to make your student loan payments. Well, we can use that same act, and Biden, through executive order, even if McConnell's the leader of the Senate, Biden can say, I am eliminating $50,000 per person of federal student debt. And obviously, it's not just young people that hold that debt. There's people that are still paying it off decades later. It would be an incredible economic stimulus. The people that have their debt wiped out will start doing things and buying things and starting businesses. It's an economic stimulus that doesn't need McConnell. It can go around McConnell. And there's all sorts of other things. The pandemic is a real emergency, unlike a couple that Trump concocted. So under the National Emergencies Act, Biden can say there's going to be no utility shutoffs, moratorium on utility shutoffs. And then, you know, my favorite is the Clean Air Act gives the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, all this power. And they can step into what we call sacrifice zones. These communities, largely African-American, Latino, in Texas, in Louisiana, these communities right next to the refineries. The EPA could step in under Biden's executive order and deal with that pollution on day one. So there are all these things that can be done on day one. And indeed, there's a progressive magazine, American Prospect, that has a day one agenda of all the things Biden can do. So our No Honeymoon campaign, we're ready to go no matter what happens in Georgia. That there's obviously we want a Democratic Senate, but if not, we're still going to be making demands on the Democratic leadership to deliver for working class people of all colors.
That's right. I love that you emphasize that. No excuses. We're still pushing ahead regardless of what happens. There's a great trailer, guys. I want to share it with everybody. Check this out.
CNN projects Joseph R. Biden Jr. is elected the 46th president of the United States.
No honeymoon. What do we mean by that? We mean that we, the people, hold the power, that we must continue to fight for what is just, right, and good, and fight against what is not just, right, and good. We mean that we must have solidarity and commitment one to another. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. What do we mean by that? That as long as there are injustices, we will continue to fight. What do we mean by that? We know that when everyday people put a little extra on their ordinary, extraordinary things happen.
The pressure on Biden starts now. We are holding him accountable because we got him elected.
We mean we will continue to pursue those things that lift and edify, and we will reject those things that do not. We mean that we will not be seduced by smiles. We need action, and we need it right now. We will not relent. And that's what we mean when we say no honeymoon.
All right, so great trailer, very moving, and of course we love the voiceover artists. Who was that doing the voiceover again?
That's the wonderful Nina Turner. You know, it was so exciting during the presumed to be Democratic National Convention last year. It wasn't much of a convention, but Jeff and I were both Bernie Sanders delegates. And at Roots Action, we were able to work closely with Nina Turner, who narrated the video that we just saw. And she was our strategic delegate advisor for Roots Action as part of the independent Bernie Delegates Network. And it was fascinating to be on Zoom calls with Bernie delegates around the country, state and regional calls. We must have had a dozen of them. And it was about, yes, we have lost this battle to get a really good nominee for president. We lost the Bernie Sanders campaign. We're stuck with Biden, but history changes when people organize from the bottom up. And I think that's the carry through to this year and beyond. And you know, we were talking a few minutes ago about excuses. It's really a no honeymoon campaign from Roots Action that's about no excuses that we will accept from the top. I just ran across an article I was researching way back. Bill Clinton, many years ago, after he left office, said that the Republicans made him do it. He said the Republicans made him regulate. The Republicans made him privatize. It's complete nonsense. And there's going to be an effort to replay that tape again and again in the coming months and years. And we were just talking just minutes ago about the Clean Air Act and the need to challenge this terrible poisoning of communities in Louisiana and elsewhere. And the federal government and even the EPA has basically allowed it to happen. And the reality is nobody forced Joe Biden to put Cedric Richmond at his elbow in the White House, who's been taking vast amounts of money in Congress from those poisoners, the petrochemical industries and so forth, the oil and gas industries. And you can go across the board. Tim Vilsack, who's been nominated to reprise his job, Mr. Monsanto reprise his job as the Secretary of Agriculture. Nobody forced Joe Biden to do that. He can't blame Mitch McConnell for that nomination. So we can go across the board and say, nope, those excuses don't wash. We don't accept them. We're going to fight you.
And Tim, you mentioned our website. It's not Honeymooners. That's the Jackie Gleason TV show. It's no honeymoon.
No to the moon, Alice, to the moon.
Yeah, right. Yeah, talking about domestic violence. But yeah,
Good.
it's nohoneymoon.org. We're going to be challenging Tom Vilsack. He engaged in discrimination against black small farmers when he was Obama's Secretary of Agriculture. We're going to be fighting him. We're going to be fighting Neera Tanden, who's, as you know, as well as anyone, she loves to fight and polarize with progressives. She's been nominated to be at the Office of Management and Budget. We're going to be challenging Avril Haines, who's been nominated to be Director of National Intelligence. And you might remember when the Senate finally got its backbone to investigate the torture, often of innocent people. The torture program is part of the war on terror. And the CIA started spying on the Senate investigators. There's actually a Hollywood movie about this now. And Avril Haines was part of that operation. She excused the CIA people that were spying on the US Senate. Remember, in a democracy, in our system, the civilian authorities, they're supposed to run the Pentagon. They're supposed to run the CIA and not the other way around. So we're challenging Avril Haines, and then we're going to challenge Antony Blinken. He's a guy who gets rich by working for military contractors as a consultant, and he's been appointed to be the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State should be a diplomat, should be someone trying to stop wars, trying to keep people in our country, working class people, from going overseas as soldiers to kill Muslims, to kill dark-skinned people overseas. We need a diplomat as the Secretary of State, not someone tied in to the military-industrial complex. So we have an array of individuals we're going to fight as part of nohoneymoon.org. I see Norman chomping to get in here.
Yeah, well, I just add that we get some feedback from some folks who are very well-intentioned, and like us, they were thrilled to defeat Trump. And they say, well, come on, give Biden a break. He's not even quite president yet. Let's see what he can do. And this is deja vu all over again, as Yogi Berra would say. I mean, we heard that about Bill Clinton when he was entering the White House. We heard it about Barack Obama, and we reaped the whirlwind. We got the terrible policies of deregulation, getting rid of Glass-Steagall, and so-called welfare reform, which was an attack on poor women and families. We got that from Clinton. Then we were told that about Barack Obama, and we got the drone wars, and we got this set of policies of militarism, as well as Jeff noted a few minutes ago, failing to help people whose homes were underwater and letting them sink while Wall Street got bailed out. So the foreshadowing is already there. The personnel policy is very real. Not only that the cabinet directors, the secretaries of various departments make policy, but they always work for the president. So it's a indicator of where the president is intending to go. And this president has indicated overall, certainly he's way better than Trump, but how low a standard can you get? But he's indicated that he's going to stay corporate, he's going to stay militarist. And there is no time to lose to push back and organize against that.
As he stated, there will be no fundamental change.
Yep.
That's what he said. And you're right. Why should we wait for the no change to happen? As he's setting the agenda, he's already forecasting what kind of changes, if any, he's going to make, which don't seem like much, going down the same road as Trump. Why not get activated now? So what are some of the ways to get activated? What specific things are you instructing your members to do to make this happen?
Well, there's really an array of things that people go to NOHONEYMOON.org or RootsAction.org. Every day we have pretty much a new action at Roots Action. For instance, it's very easy for people to message their senators around these nominations that we've been talking about. And as soon as the Dog and Pony Show or the Donkey and Pony Show on Capitol Hill is done on Wednesday, and the acceptance of the Electoral College votes is finally nailed down, coming to center stage is going to be the U.S. Senate. And it's the Senate that is going to decide which nominees from then President Biden are accepted and which aren't. And we have a role to play. You know, we have a central role to play. The differential historically will be whether people organize and get active. I don't mean just emails and phone calls, which Roots Action makes it very easy for people to do to their senators, both of them, but also to organize effectively in local areas, to set up the picket lines, to visit, to insist that we're going to be visible. So, you know, that's sort of the first step. But beyond that is a 100 days program that Roots Action is going to be developing, insisting that there are no excuses, there's no kicking the can down the road. From day one, when Biden takes his hand off the Bible on January 20th, Roots Action and the No Honeymoon campaign is going to be offering a set of options, of action handles that people can grab and run with.
And a lot of those will be executive orders where Biden will have no excuse. That we will have a list of executive orders that Biden can do in his first day, his first 10 days, his first 90 days. We want action. And the reason we feel we're entitled to action is everybody knows why Biden won. You know, they spent millions and millions of dollars trying to persuade the so-called persuadables. These are the moderate Republicans. Well, I mean, after Reagan, Bush, Gingrich, Bush, Trump, I don't think there are any more moderate Republicans, but they spent millions of dollars on those ads. And the reason that Biden won was because of young people and activism, people of color and people of color activism, progressive activism. That's what made the difference in Wisconsin. That's what made the difference in Arizona. That's what made the difference in Georgia.
Absolutely.
We were on the street, rootsaction.org, with our Vote Trump Out, then Challenge Biden. We were on the streets in Kenosha with Jacob Black, the uncle of the victim of the police shooting in Kenosha. And there was all this energy around Black Lives Matter and demilitarize the cops. And that energy was turned into, let's get Trump out. He's the racist in chief. So there was all this energy. We delivered for Biden, and now it's time for Biden to deliver for poor people and working class people and for progressives.
You know, on that note, and I've demonstrated, I've been dragged out of Democratic Party events. I've been inside Democratic Party in the sense of I was an Obama delegate in 2008 and a Bernie delegate twice. And something that's really occurred to me over time is that there's a tacit division of labor that the top of the Democratic Party and their pals on Wall Street really believe in. They believe that it's the job of young people, if they can cajole them into voting, people of color, famously it is Black women who are the backbone of the party, and it's true in terms of turnout and votes. They believe that it's low-income people, young people, people of color who have the responsibility. Their job is to donate money as much as they can, do some canvassing, do some volunteering, tell their friends to go out and vote, host the candidate at the Black churches the Sunday before the election, and then help get the turnout. That's the job of the base of the party, according to and in the minds of and outlook of the people at the top of the party. And then the other part of the division of labor are the corporate leaders, the Wall Street people, those who are brought into the cabinets of Democratic administrations who support Democrats, and their job is to limit the options, to curtail what is even talked about, to put a little fence around what the president might even consider if that president is a Democrat. And I think part of what is implicit and often explicit in what progressive movements are saying now is that we completely reject that division of labor. We just don't accept it. We're going to fight for all of it because it's about people who should have democracy at their hands and use that democracy. And we're tired of being subservient. We're not going to put up with it anymore.
And
Jeff and Norman, I just want to say that you guys are saying everything that I'm thinking. I mean, that's why I'm not interrupting. Only thing I would like to add is, did you hear the Joe Biden conference with the civil rights activists and Al Sharpton and the whole? And that's exactly what jumped front to mind, is that, and also other instances where I think what they try to do is, you say, the upper echelon of the Democratic Party, the corporate wing, so to speak, their job is to control us.
Yeah.
It's to minimize progressives, to minimize the actual left wing of the party, and demoralize us and neutralize us, so to speak, which is what Neera Tanden and the crew do. So that's why a lot of progressives are so angry and frustrated, because they see this playing out time and time again, shut down the progressives and just go ahead and do business as usual. I was in South Carolina, and on the ground, it looked really good for Bernie Sanders, and we were very excited. And then came Clyburn, and then came the establishment, and then the coalescence of all the moderate neoliberal factions of the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, well, at the time, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Beto O'Rourke even came out of the woods and endorsed Joe Biden, and it's never happened before, you know? So I just wanted to add those two elements. But
why are you making us relive that? That was, I mean, I know for some of us, you know, it would seem like there is this possibility that Bernie Sanders is going to be the president. And then all of this crap happened, and it happened so fast, and Clyburn was right in the middle of it, and you just made us relive the trauma. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we do the electing of them, and then the Democratic leaders want to, all right, we're not listening to you anymore. You did your job. Now we'll listen to the corporate donor class and the corporate media and the corporate pundit class. And it's that corporate class that keeps telling the public and Biden, Medicare for all, universal health care is unrealistic. It's unaffordable. Now, somehow they've never explained why for 50 years that Marxist-Leninist country to the north, Canada, has had Medicare for all, but somehow it's unaffordable and unworkable here. We have to suffer through private insurance and big pharma. And again, Biden is getting that pressure from the corporate donor class, and we've got to drown that out by having so much uproar from below.
And I think this does, this whole dynamic can raise a question of representation. Who's really being represented and how? Martin Luther King wrote about how all too often in that context of the civil rights movement, that representatives of the movement often ended up representing the establishment to the movement, not the movement to the establishment. And I think we see that a lot now in Congress. We have these wonderful, strong, authentic progressives, the squad that's now just doubled. But then we have a lot of other people in Congress who may really do some good things, but they claim to represent progressive movements. But most of the interaction is explaining to us at the grassroots why we have to settle for very little.
Absolutely. Yeah, look, let the grown-ups run it. You sit down. You don't understand what's going on here. Let us take care of it for you. This is how it's done, and what's done is the same old status quo. And we stay in abject poverty. Many of us underemployed, and we continue to go to wars. And the drone attacks continue, and mass incarceration. 5% of the world's population 25% of the world's incarcerated people. And there you go. So,
Yeah.
guys, like I said, you had me at hello on this entire concept of NOHONEYMOON.org. And I just want to encourage everybody to go get involved. Jeff, Norman, you don't know how many times people say, Tim, what can we do?
Yeah.
They don't just want to be on Twitter.
Yeah.
People don't just want to go to YouTube videos. I love the fact that you have something that people can get involved in. It's across the country. I don't know, tell people exactly how to go, sign up, ways to get involved, any way that you can add on to that. I just want to get them excited.
I think people should go to rootsaction.org, and you go upper right of the homepage. All we need is your email address and your zip code. And then we'll make it easy for you to lobby your member of the Congress or your 2 senators. And then our current project, as you laid out at the beginning, is NoHoneyMoon.org. That's where we'll be challenging the Biden administration in the first few months. And you've probably used this quote on your show before. It's my favorite quote since I was, like Norman, we were both activists as teenagers in the late 60s in civil rights and anti-Vietnam War. And let me see if I can find this quote. Yes, Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist, slavery abolitionist. If there's no struggle, there's no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. We want people to remember the Frederick Douglass quote when they hear, oh, you don't want to polarize with Biden. Biden's no Trump. Biden's our friend. No, power concedes nothing without a demand. We're going to be making demands.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about that mentality with the core of my audience.
Yeah,
but I do realize that as we move across the country in different pockets, of course, we have more people who are not as aware of the need to pressure, politicians in that way. And, after 3 or 4 years of Trump's a Russian bot, and then he doesn't get, convicted or indicted, people kind of say, I see the Democrats, they're just full of it. So, so I get the apathy that people have. Anything else to add, gentlemen, before we wrap this up?
Norman?
Great talking to you.
Well, first, Tim, I've been an admirer of your show for years, and it's just really wonderful to be able to dialogue with you here. I believe that there have been quantum leaps that the corporate media not only don't acknowledge, but denigrate. And one thing that is worth mentioning, certainly, is that we shouldn't take our cues in any way from All Things Considered, Morning Edition, MSNBC, CNN. Yes, they're not Fox. They're not outright crazy. They don't make stuff up all the time, but they don't sustain or even validate or even usually acknowledge that history is made by people who organize. Nothing we could be proud of, that we can be proud of in this country, was handed from on high. It's totally in the vein that Frederick Douglass was talking about. Nothing is handed down. And the news media, often the corporate media, encourage us to believe that if we can just get the right individuals in there, or the moderate individuals in there in power, or the nice liberal people in power, that's how change happens. It's just a fairy tale. And progressives and people who want to end the suffering, people dying every day, people homeless every day, people under the bombs every day that are being bought, instead of providing for people's human needs, we all are learning that we've got to organize to have a humane society.
Perfect. Just before you go, thank you so much for joining me. I think that we should continue this conversation. I'm going to send a lot of people your way, and just keep doing what you're doing. I think that right now, I think that we have some people that are going to wake up. I think that I was worried, but I now feel that there's a sense. I mean, after Trump knocking over all the furniture, people are kind of worried about it and kind of paying attention to where it's getting put back. So I think we may have I don't know if that analogy works, but that's sort of the sense I'm getting, even on Facebook and conservative pockets across the internet.
Yeah.
So Jeff and Norman, thank you for your work. Folks, go to NoHoneyMoon.org, go to Roots Action, and become a part of this. Join us, and let's make some things happen for the people, by the people.
Thanks, Tim. It's been an honor.
Thanks so much, Tim.
Same here, guys. A pleasure.
Bye-bye.
The Tim's list for January is NoHoneyMoon.org, a project devised by Roots Action. And they believe that, yes, we got Trump out, but that's not time to go to sleep. It's definitely not time to go on a honeymoon. Now it's time to challenge Joe Biden to get the policies enacted that we want. NoHoneyMoon.org. No time off, no breaks, no honeymoon. Go get it done. Let me ask you something. Do they know us? When I say they, I mean the talking heads on cable news. Do they know you? I mean, they talk about the world as if it's a sport. They play political games, report on our pain, rack our brain to feed the stock exchange, but do they know us? Do they know what we care about? Nope. They're too far away. They can't see us. They can't feel us. They can't relate to us. See, when you want to know what's going on in your world, trust someone who lives in your world. Subscribe.